Good morning. For our opening words, we will read a poem by Stephanie Kaza responsively. The poem is in the order of service. The left side, the middle aisle, will read the lines for the left side. The right side will read the right side. For those on Zoom, if your last name ends in A through M, you can read the left side. Those whose last name ends in N through Z, you can read the right. I will lead the left side, and I've invited Dorothy here to lead the right. Okay. We Live by the Sun by Stephanie Kaza. We live by the sun, we feel by the moon, we move by the stars. Will everybody, all things live in us.
We eat by the earth, we drink from the rain, we breathe of the air. All things live in us. All things live in us.
We call to each other, we listen to each other. Our hearts deepen with love and compassion. We live in all things live in us.
We depend on the trees and animals. We depend on the earth. Our minds are open with wisdom and insight. We live in all things live in us.
We dedicate our practices to others. We include all forms of life. We celebrate the joy of living, dying. We live in all things live in us. We are full of life. We are full of death. We are grateful for all beings and companions.
For our awareness and acknowledgement, we recognize this land where we meet today has been inhabited and stewarded by the Indigenous Algonquin-speaking peoples for millennia. When the Massachusetts tribe greeted the Mayflower, their people spanned the coastal plains from the Pennacock, Pawtucket, and Wabanaki tribes to the north by present-day Cape Ann, to the Paconet, Wampanoag, and Narragansett tribes to the south by present-day Rhode Island, and extended westward to the Nipmuc tribe by the fresh waters of the Nashua River and by additional lands extending further westward and southward to and through Connecticut. Today we reside on the ancestral lands of the Massachusetts and Pawtucket. Befriending the pioneer colonists some 400 years ago, the Massachusetts and Nipmuc tribes adopted the colonists' advocated Christian religion and assimilated it into their own earth-based religion and traditions. Self-governed and fixed in location, the Massachusetts tribe inhabited Natick, Neshoba, and Ponkapog villages, and the Nipmuc settled Hassanamacet village, known by Grafton today, and both known as Praying Indian villages. Over the years, all these indigenous people have faced great sufferings and painful atrocities at the hands of the new European colonial pioneers. Those include encroachment of, forced displacement from, relinquishments of unceded lands, colonial and state-sponsored genocide, erasure of culture, execution, slavery, indentured servitude, exposure to fatal pestilence, and being demonized and marginalized as conflicting indigenous and European cultures clash. The indigenous people still remain with us and take pride in their long-standing traditions and ancestral heritage. Let us learn from these tribal members and their descendants, support them as they still confront injustices today, and partake of their offered friendship as we come together as brothers and sisters and together strive for better understanding and more just futures. I should point out that Sharon McDonald has recently written a brochure on the Indigenous people of Bedford, and that will be available. There will be a discussion later in the Bacon Room. So let me introduce hymn 203. I invite you to rise as you're willing and able, and join in our opening hymn, number 203, All Creatures of the Earth and Sky.
We welcome everyone to remain standing in body or in spirit for our unison affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ley. Este es nuestro gran pacto, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros.
Good morning. You sound especially good coming from this side. Is that you, Abby Hafer? Welcome to the First Parish in Bedford. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. We know that life is richer, deeper, and more gratifying if we live it together. And so we celebrate the many diversities among us age, race, class, differing abilities, sexual orientation or gender identity, religious and political beliefs. Welcome everyone, and welcome also to those who are joining us on Zoom, somewhere out there in the wider community. Let's all turn around and wave to our friends. We know you are waving back. We are especially delighted to see you here if this is your first time with us, and we would love to know more about you. You will find a connection card in your pew. You could fill it out and put it in the offering basket during the offertory. And please do join us for community hour in the common room after the service. This congregation has a long history of lay-led leadership, and today's service follows in that tradition. The Environmental Justice Committee is behind all of what happens in today's service, and they are up to lots of good mischief this year. Thank you to all of them for leading today and for hosting a service discussion upstairs in the bacon room up there. After the service, you could grab a cup of coffee and then head on upstairs and have some treats that I know are already up there. They were smelling good when I went by. So I will go to it. I hope you all go to it. It's a discussion, an open discussion about what we hear in the service today. Downstairs here at the same time, we'll close those windows. Dorothy Perales is going to be hosting a practice dance. If you want to dance in the wonderful October 30th Halloween Addams Family themed dance, you don't have to have any dance experience, you just have to want to be part of it. So show up here, it'll happen every service, after every service, each week from now until then.
But it is for teens and
Oh, sorry.
youth and children. Sorry, guys.
It's not for grown-ups, so. You may have heard that our own Sharon McDonald, Bedford Town historian, has written a new pamphlet. You heard about it from Don McIver a moment ago. It is the history of Indigenous people in Bedford. She has some copies of this available at Community Hour. Looking ahead to a little bit, New Member Sunday. It's coming up November 20th. We actually have a few folks who haven't yet had the chance to be welcomed by our community as new members, and so that is the day we've chosen. If you are somebody who would like to join and become a member of this fabulous community, you can do it. Speak to a minister. And we have some young people who we are so thrilled to dedicate on that day. And so if there are young people in your family that you would like to have dedicated, you can't really be too old of a young person to be dedicated to being raised in this spiritual community. Speak to Annie or to me if you would like to be a part of that. This congregation has lots of ways to be involved, and sometimes it's hard to get on board the moving train and to find your niche. And for this reason, the leadership team dreamed up an idea that we hope that you will really enjoy. On New Member Sunday, November 20th, we will also be having an ice cream sundae during community hour. The church will provide the ice cream, and every team or committee is invited to have a table with information where you can hawk your wares about what you do, whether you wind the clock or whether you're on parish board. And you can tell a little bit about what you do and see if anybody is interested in hearing more. And you get to compete for the best types of topping. So people wander around and get hot fudge or junior mints or Reese's crumbles. You choose. It's an opportunity fair for everyone to hear about what great things they can be a part of, and a delicious community hour time. Please spread the word to your teams and plan to come and enjoy. And now, a time for all ages led by Lisa Maria Andrioli Steinberg and Erin Dorr.
Good morning. Good morning. You gonna do one too? Good morning. It's one of the joys of being up here. You get to like make them all say good morning back to you. I'm just saying, it's one of the fun things. So, our story this morning is, in the beginning, there was the sky world and sky woman, and she fell like a maple seed swirling on an autumn breeze. A column of light streamed from a hole in the sky world, marking her path where only darkness had been before. Hurtling downward, she saw only dark water below. But in that emptiness, there were many eyes gazing up at the sudden ray of light that accompanied her. And as it grew closer, they could see that it was a woman, arms outstretched, long black hair billowing as she spiraled toward them.
The geese nodded at one another and rose from the water in a wave of goose music. Far from the only home she'd ever known, she caught her breath at the warm embrace of the soft feathers as they gently carried her downward. And so it began.
The geese could not hold the woman above the water for much longer, so they called a council, a group, to decide what to do. Resting on their wings, she saw them all gather: loons, otters, swans, beavers, fish of all kinds. A great turtle floated in their midst and offered his back for her to rest upon. Gratefully, she stepped from the goose wings onto the dome of the turtle's shell. The others understood that she needed land for her home and discussed how they might serve her need. The deep divers among them had heard of mud at the bottom of the water and agreed to go find some.
One by one, the animals offered to help: loon, otter, beaver, and sturgeon. But the depth, the darkness, and the pressures were too great for even the strongest of swimmers. When the small, limp body of the muskrat, the only one left, came to the surface, the others noticed that his paw was tightly clenched, and when they opened it, there was a small handful of mud. And Turtle said, "Here, put it on my back, and I will hold it."
Moved by the extraordinary gifts of the animals, the woman sang in thanksgiving and began to dance, her feet caressing the earth on the back of the turtle. And the land grew and grew as she danced her thanks from that little dab of mud until the whole earth was made. And together they formed what we know today as Turtle Island.
Like any good guest, Sky Woman did not come empty-handed. When she toppled from the hole in the sky world, she had reached out to grab onto the tree of life that grew there. And in her grasp were branches, fruits and seeds of all kinds of plants, and these she scattered on the new ground and carefully tended each one until the world turned from brown to green. Wild grasses, flowers, trees, and medicines spread everywhere. And now that the animals too had plenty to eat, many came to live with her on Turtle Island, our home.
Thank you for listening to our story this morning. I now invite our pre-K through 7th graders to depart for their classes. 6th and 7th are upstairs in 204. Pre-K through 5th will be in the common room, and we will see you all after the rest of the worship. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Sandy Bosnowski, a member of the Lay Pastoral Care Team. And now is a good time to focus your thoughts before you come up here. Think about how you're going to share a joy or concern in a brief way. And we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Didn't realize I was going first. This is a candle of concern for my aunt, my father's sister, who was recently diagnosed with a malignant melanoma on her scalp. Fortunately, it is, I guess, stage 1A, so which I assume means the prospects are pretty good. But it's nerve-wracking in the meantime. So keep her in your thoughts, please. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Mark. This is a candle of hope for Patty Farolito. Patty is the mother of my son-in-law, Paul. She is still young, like 76 or something. She's still young. And she's been very ill. She's had a blood infection, which they have finally been able to clear, but she has problems with 3 of her heart valves. So the decision has been made to try surgery. It's very unclear, it's pretty risky, but if she doesn't do it, she won't be around very long either way. So please, hope for Patty.
If there are any people out on Zoom who would like to share a joy or concern, now is a good time to speak up. Raise your hand, and whoever our tech person is that's working from home could let us know.
Anybody, I hear Maria Dancer, you can unmute.
Good morning. I have some important conversations coming up and some decisions to make, and I'm asking Sandy to please light a candle of hope for me and asking you to send some thoughts my way to strengthen me and to help good outcomes in all of these. Thanks.
Thank you, Maria.
Okay, Lee, you can go.
Morning, everybody. This is a candle of joy for the service of Julie Turner, who founded and has been working with incredible diligence on the Bedford Citizen for the last decade. She will be retiring from much of the work she did this coming week. Other people will take it up. So the Citizen isn't going anywhere, but Julie is, and I would love to have us all know how grateful we are for community-based news in Bedford.
Thank you, Lee.
And I don't see any other hands. So.
Well, thank you, everyone, for your sharings, and I would light one final candle for those joys and concerns that we keep silently in our hearts. Also, I will stay up at the candle stand after the service if you'd like to light a candle in private.
Good morning. I'm Corrine Dowd, and I'll be sharing a climate justice moment. I grew up loving nature, and some of my favorite memories include summers at the lake, hiking in the woods, and family vacations at Acadia National Park, an amazing place in Maine. Over the years, I tuned in more to climate change as I watched my mom, Tink Martin, advocate for environmental justice. Her passion was anything water, lakes, oceans, and especially sailing. In her weekly column in the Winthrop Transcript, whether writing about the Boston Harbor Islands, Belle Isle Marsh, or boating safety, she highlighted the people who worked behind the scenes to protect treasures for future generations. Her writing was a tool to inform, connect, and spark action. Climate justice is people justice, and healing our planet is critical. So what's my role to impact climate? Unlike my mother, I am not a professional writer, but I was drawn to people who care about the environment, and then they encouraged me to get involved. A key part of my journey was joining environmental groups. including the First Parish Environmental Justice Committee, which I chair, the Climate Reality Project. You may recall a lyceum I did a couple years ago on the climate crisis, the Sierra Club, and Mothers Out Front. As Reverend John Gibbons would say when quoting Bill McKibben, what's the most important thing that an individual can do to make change in the world? Stop being an individual and come together and push for solutions. Last year, many of us read and loved the book Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. We had book discussions and field trips, including an Indigenous walking tour, a maple sugaring tour, and an edible nature walk. I had no clue how many edible plants there are all around us. Taking action builds hope. Okay, but then what inspires one to take action? For me, Robin Wall Kimmerer nails it when she says that what she embraces more than hope is the power of love. She says, for when we fall in love with the living world, we cannot be bystanders to its destruction. Attention becomes intention, which then coalesces to action. So deep attention calls us into deep relationship. And if you engage in fierce love for the world and act from it, that is more powerful and more active than hope. We are in a climate crisis, and much of the discourse around environmental issues is based on fear. Though we grieve what's lost and may fear what's ahead, we must also love what's left and love it fiercely. I couldn't agree more with Robin Wall Kimmerer, and she says, it's not the land that is broken, but more importantly, our relationship to the land. She shares this insightful quote from Christy Belcourt. All species, the lands, the waters, are one beating organism that pulses like a heart. We are all part of the whole. The animals and plants, lands and waters are our relatives, each with as much right to exist as we have. When we see ourselves as separate from each other and think of other species, the waters and the planets itself as objects that can be owned, dominated, or subjugated, we lose connection with our humanity and we create imbalance on the earth. So, let's love this earth fiercely and protect it like family. Chief Carringhands, wife of Lynn Hovey, who made the stained glass window in the common room, preached this message. What causes my heart to smile is the sacred thread throughout earth connecting all things. Man cannot claim the sun, the moon, the stars, the sky, the wind, and the water. For you cannot control these, and it is given equally to all. And you need all these to live. You can truly own nothing but your heart. And know that the heart is the seat of the soul. Love is the spirit of this church. Climate change is something we know about, but may want to put on the back burner if it's not affecting us personally, especially when dealing things with like COVID or the war on Ukraine. So how can we fall deeper in love with this precious earth and improve our relationship with the living world? Let's take this to heart. The climate can't wait, nor can we. Thank you.
We have a poem by our own poet laureate, Lois Pulliam.
We're still at work on climate change, at home, at work, at church. If things don't start improving, we'll soon be in the lurch. Our sweetgrass reed and gardening have made a useful plus, and now we must keep working on a way of changing us.
Thank you, Lois. Freely we have received, freely may we give. Our morning's offering will now be gratefully received. Inside the sanctuary of the Belmont UU Church, it's wooden. The sky, sort of sky, arches upward. It's like the underbelly of a boat. And I used to go with my parents between when I was 0 and 6 years old. And I would take it all in, often from underneath the dark wood pews, my favorite place, where if I was very lucky, I would find, not quite all used up, chewing gum. And my parents were just happy if I was quiet and I got to chew my secret gum in peace. Once it was even grape. That was the best. I guess it was some other kid sitting in that pew. Well, it was there that I heard these words by Marjorie Montgomery. Every week it was a set of words that congregation used as they lit the chalice. And many years later, when I was asked to describe UU theology in a sentence, these are the words that sprung to mind. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. When I began thinking about how to create a sermon on this weekend before Indigenous Peoples Day, I knew I needed to reflect on my own oldest heartfelt truth about why I care for the earth, why I care about the earth. When I read a book as powerful as Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, It's all I can do but to gesture wildly at you, imploring you to read it. It's one giant, gorgeous sermon. But I really can't write a sermon that just says, the sermon is over there. So, before I started sharing Kimmerer's ideas with you, I felt I had to be honest with myself and you. I love this good earth, especially New England, where I grew up. And my truth is that as a child, I was so lonely that the trees were my first friends. The one outside my bedroom window was who I talked to at night. The soft willow at the park was where I would hide for comfort, and the tangled forests of western Massachusetts were my wonderland of freedom and joy. Animals were my companions in much the same way. I held a tiny orange kitten for hours at my grandmother's nursing home while my grandma took her last breaths. An old horse named Checkers showed me how to move slowly and how never to be greedy or a trickster, not even as pretend. I could go on, but you get my idea. When I think of polar bears, I'm gutted. Like, I can't even move thinking about those polar bears. And this is how I know that I love this earth, because it breaks me open with grief and with love. Life is a gift for which I am grateful, but grateful as a word doesn't hold all of what I feel. I feel I can never do enough for this earth to return the love that has been given to me. I'm sure that you too have a heart story about why you care for our earth, that deep down place where you would get scrappy for your grandchildren, or the polar bears, or the lot of trees about to be decimated down the street. Like Mimi Adler, do you remember her? She was in her 80s or perhaps even 90s, and with a bunch of other elder women, she chained herself to a giant old tree in Bedford in order to save it. You have that touchstone too, I bet, and yet maybe, like me, you too feel daunted and deflated when you look at statistics or read the news. But Kimmerer's book is anything but depressing. It's enlightening because it's written by an Indigenous woman whose entire way of seeing things turns everything that's wonky about our Western society over and casts it in a different light. Kimmerer is a mother, scientist, a decorated professor, and an enrolled member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation. She is a distinguished teaching professor of environmental biology at State University of New York, the State University of New York, and the founder and director of the Center for Native Peoples and the Environment. Maybe you read Braiding Sweetgrass as part of our all-church read, or maybe it's on your list to read. But either way, this is not the crowd that needs to be convinced that something needs to be done about climate change. This is the church that sued the town for permission to put solar panels on our roof. Some of you got arrested for lying down in a pipeline. Brown's here to probably tell the tale about that. We collected a bail fund to get him out. And all the other folks who keep doing that one next right thing, like splitting farm shares to keep it local each summer. I know you. As often as you can, you show up, act up, and want a better world. A world where no one and no thing is left out of the circle of care and respect. That's our Unitarian Universalist theology. We work together for the greater good. And what's refreshing about Kimmerer's book is that it doesn't focus on a way forward that is entirely guilt-based or will-based. It's built on reciprocity. Robin Wall Kimmerer describes the concept of gift economy in Braiding Sweetgrass. In her childhood, it was wild strawberry patches growing in the fields beyond her house that shaped her understanding of this way of life. They were a generous gift scattered at her feet, ripe for the plucking. A gift comes to you, Wall Kimmerer says, through no action of your own, free, having moved toward you without your beckoning. A gift is not a reward. You cannot earn it or call it to you or even deserve it. And yet it appears. Your only role is to be open-eyed and present. A gift keeps on giving. A relationship is established between the giver and the recipient, a relationship of reciprocity. For example, as Kimmerer describes in her gratitude for the strawberries, she weeds out patches for them to extend their runners each season, enabling them to expand their generosity, even as she shares the gifts of their generosity with the rest of her family. Indigenous culture is based on reciprocity rather than dominating or acquiring. Along came the Europeans with a tragic misapplication of their scriptures. And then here we are, centuries later, having inherited that history, enduring the consequences of our destruction. We are scrambling for indigenous wisdom to save us and the entire planet from the way of life we forced upon them. Kimmerer writes, on one side of the world were people whose relationship with the living world was shaped by Sky Woman, the story we just heard this morning, who created a garden for the well-being of all. On the other side was another woman with a garden and a tree. But for tasting its fruit, she was banished from the garden, and the gates clanged shut behind her. That mother of men was made to wander in the wilderness and earn her bread by the sweat of her brow, not by filling her mouth with the sweet, juicy fruits that bend the branches low. In order to eat, she was instructed to subdue the wilderness into which she was cast. Same species, same earth, different stories. Like creation stories everywhere, cosmologies are a source of identity and orientation to the world. They tell us who we are. We are inevitably shaped by them, no matter how distant they may be from our consciousness. One story leads to the generous embrace of the living world, the other to banishment. One woman is our ancestral gardener, a co-creator of the good green world that would be the home of her descendants. The other was an exile just passing through an alien world on a rough road to her real home in heaven. And then they meet, the offspring of Sky Woman and the children of Eve, and the land around us bears the scars of that meeting, the echoes of our stories. They say that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and I can only imagine the conversation between Eve and Sky Woman. Sister, you got the short end of the stick. Reciprocity in a gift-based economy, rather than a money-based economy, changes everything. Imagine raising children in a culture in which gratitude is the first priority, and compare that to what we experience in contemporary consumerist US culture. How do we respond to the enormous abundance that the world freely gives us? Kimmerer says, something beyond gratitude is asked of us. We are bound in a covenant of reciprocity. Indigenous people have a concept of the honorable harvest. You may have read all about it much more at length in the book. I hope you will if you didn't yet. It's something like a roadmap rather than rules, a way of life and a compass. So these are the passed along, told orally, and now written down, honorable harvest roadmap. Know the ways of the ones who take care of you, so that you may take care of them. Introduce yourself. Be accountable as the one who comes asking for life. Ask permission before taking. Abide by the answer. Never take the first and never take the last. Take only what you need. Take only that which is given. Never take more than half. Leave some for others. Harvest in a way that minimizes harm. Use it respectfully. Never waste what you have taken. Share. Give thanks for what you have been given. Give a gift in reciprocity for what you have taken. Sustain the ones who sustain you, and the earth will last forever. So this is the challenge. To be a part of repairing the world, we must hold onto and let go of the self at the same time. What I mean is that each one of us won the lottery when we were born. The chances of being born were truly 1 in a billion or more. Imagine if great-great-uncle Bob never went to town way back that hot June day, and therefore never met Helen at the grocer, and poof, hundreds of family members. If not thousands, well, they would have never come to be. Not your mom, not you, not your kid or grandkid either. A wise person once said that if we ever became fully aware of the improbability of our existence, well, we'd walk around staring up at the firmament, jaw hanging open, and never get the laundry done at all. It's a good thing we are so oblivious most of the time. One of the most difficult parts, then, about working for climate justice is the necessity of holding on to the miracle of existence in all its forms of life and humbling oneself in gratitude, remembering one's own worth, and simultaneously acquiring a selflessness rare among the best of us. Being grateful requires us to remember that we are not owed anything, really. The truth is that we are no more or less sacred than the blue whale, the plankton, or the molecule of water in a cloud. Even the term steward of the earth lifts up a scriptural message that we are in charge and that humans are the best of creation. Yes, being human, we have a mind to use for good, but we are not the best or the most loved species. When we as humans demonstrate our love for one another, it's in ways that are often analogous to the way that the earth takes care of us. When we love somebody, it doesn't come from a will-based part of ourselves. Usually. If it does, it is a really big struggle to love somebody. That I know to be true. We put their well-being at the top of the list, and we want to feed them well. We want to nurture them. We want to teach them. We want to bring beauty into their lives. We want to make them comfortable and safe and healthy. Kimmerer says, that's how I demonstrate love, in part, to my family, and that's just what I feel in the garden, is that the earth loves us back in beans and corn and strawberries. Food could taste bad. It could be bland and boring, but it isn't. These are their wonderful gifts that the plants beings, to my mind, have shared with us. And it's a really liberating idea, she says, to think that the earth could love us back. But it also opens the notion of reciprocity, that with that love and regard from the earth comes a deep responsibility. Kimmerer often points to the food movement as a visible place where reciprocity between people and the land lives. Movements from tree planting to community gardens, farm to school, local, organic, all of these things are just at the right scale, she says, because the benefits come directly into you and your family, and the benefits of your relationships to land are manifest right in your community, right in your patch of soil and what you're putting on your plate. Just as the land shares food with us, we share with each other and then contribute to the flourishing of that place that feeds us. Pay attention to where your heart feels the love. Kimmerer encourages all of us to deepen our roots in the places we live now. For the sake of the people and the land, Kimmerer writes, the urgent work of settler Americans now may be to set aside the ways of the colonist and become indigenous to place. And for this nation of immigrants, to learn to live here as if we are staying. As a Native American person, it's not an idea that she puts forward lightly. She notes that it's certainly not intended as an invitation to take what little is left. Rather, Kimmerer explains, to become Indigenous is to grow the circle of healing to include all of creation. Putting down roots where we are and becoming native to that place means developing a different kind of relationship to the land we live on and to the other beings who live here with us. It means listening deeply to our place and our community. It means forming relationships based on reciprocity in the web of life and responsibility to future generations. So, whatever your relationship to your cultural roots, on the brink of Indigenous Peoples Day, I invite you to learn some names that you do not already know of a few plants, a bird, or some other creature that coexists with you in this place. To know another's name is to honor its existence. Caring changes everything. They say that young people today can recognize around 100 logos, but often when they're asked to name different species of plants, the name's like an oak tree or is it a willow, they can only name around 10. We are called to move beyond gratitude, to once again become cultures of reciprocity, where in everyday life we give thanks for what we've been given and then give a gift in reciprocity for what we've taken. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. And in all our days, may we give back manifold with respect and love. Amen. Our closing hymn is number 163, For the Earth Forever Turning.
I'll start by saying that our closing words, and great minds think alike. The Harvest Roadmap clearly spoke to me just as much as it spoke to Megan, and I think that the words are so impactful and so important for any age to hear. So it's written in your order of service. I'd encourage you to read them, but rather than repeat them right behind it being just beautifully said, Megan. I want to close out our service today with the opening words in the front of the booklet. We are showered every day with gifts, but they are not meant for us to keep. Their life is their movement, the inhale, the exhale of our shared breath. Our work and our joy is to pass along those gifts and to trust that what we put out into the universe will always come back. Thank you.